Hello and welcome. Today, my guest is Elizabeth Strickler. She is the Director of Media Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Georgia State University. Going to be talking about all the changing things in the landscape of entertainment media, technology, and how students can be best prepared for that changing landscape and make sure that they come out of college ready to tackle the workforce. So, Elizabeth, how are you doing today?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing good. Excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I feel like you've probably got some of the best insights possible of really what is happening on the ground floor and how students need to be best prepared for it. So, why don't you give a little bit of insight into what exactly is, the title of Director of Media and Entrepreneurship and Innovation? It's a lot of buzzwords, but what
Yeah.
exactly does maybe a day-to-day look like for you?
Yeah. At Georgia State University, I've been there for a really long time. And I actually came in as a technologist, meaning systems administrator kind of person. But I also, but I was brought in to do the Kodak Cineon film system,
Hmm.
which is how, way back in the day when you had to scan film, do the effects, and then print it back to film. So while I was doing that, I got my MFA, and then together with a group of people at Georgia State, we transformed the old SunTrust building into the Creative Media Industries Institute, which is basically kind of trying to look at what the creative industries, what's going on with that in an education setting, but really connecting it to the industry.
Hmm.
As opposed to like film theory and that kind of thing. So that was my first, that was a really big transformation there. But while I was doing that, I got my MFA and became faculty at Georgia State. So I'm just really interested in the intersection of art and technology and business. And so that has gone on, and I started the media entrepreneurship program, which is looking at opportunities within the media space and where businesses can be started. And I'm jointly appointed in the Creative Media Industries Institute, which is the College of Arts and Sciences, and in the business school and the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute there. So the simplest way to describe what I do is I teach creativity to business people and business to creatives.
Such an important thing. I find that that's such an overlap that is missing oftentimes, especially from the creative types, is trying to apply how do I turn my creative ideations into a business is something that is one of the hardest conversions for most people. So for you being able to actually teach them that and educate them on what it is to build a business around that, but then also from a standpoint of the business, like you're saying, trying to introduce a little more creativity into the business realm, because a lot of times it's incredibly sterile,
Yeah.
incredibly it's very cold.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, but what I end up finding that I do is helping people try to understand where the trends are going, so that just understanding how to create a business and trying to figure out who your target market is, making sure that you're solving a problem that other people will actually pay for. But there's so much creativity within that space. But I really have to do a lot of people understanding where technology trends are moving in the forward towards, so that students cannot create a business for now and the past, but for the future and then backwards back to now. So that's where sort of the innovation part comes in. So I teach a lot of emerging technology to help people understand just where things are going. And I don't do it in the like super deep dive, like this is what a VFX person is going to do. But these are the tools that VFX people use. Where might be the opportunity within this space to solve the, you know, evolving problems?
How do you go through teaching, say, a student or really anyone of that, of saying, okay, here's the current technology landscape and here's what's going on. And based on that, how do you look forward to the future and try to determine to make sure you're future proofing?
Yeah, so it's not easy, and um, it's definitely, we don't have a ton of like really high end success stories. And again, we're at Georgia State, we teach a lot of sort of service oriented as opposed to just being like a pure tech play, because we don't have an engineering school. So it's one thing to teach somebody how to kind of create a new technology of some sort that you would do something over at Georgia Tech. But it's definitely a place where people can figure out like location scouting as a business, but using all the newest tools so that you don't, do it an old school way so that you can be competitive in the market. Or, maybe some component of special effects. So it's just more project oriented, but really understanding how to price something out, how to understand what your value is, how to do a comparison and a cost analysis to what, the competitors might have. And right now it's really hard because of AI. I don't think anybody can actually future-proof themselves. So it's a super complicated space at the moment.
So for you, what do you consider like a success metric? How do you determine if a student is successfully prepared? What do you, how do you get your goal? What's your check mark at the end of the year?
Yeah. Okay, well, we have a lot of them. One is just that we graduate the students so that they graduate, okay? So it's interesting because I teach undergraduates in the Creative Media Industries Institute, and I teach MBA students in the business school. And so in the business school, let's just start there. We have a variety of student types. We call them personas. So there's some people who want to start a business, but there's other people who might want to be like people who innovate within a company that they already work for. Like I have students from Coca-Cola, from Home Depot, from Truist. And so they might want to keep their job for a while. They're not ready to jump in and start a new thing, but they want to be innovators, or what we call, practicing entrepreneurship within those spaces. So the students who do that, often if they can create a pitch, explain to their employee what the benefit might be, and just get their foot in the door. That from taking, so they're taking one single class from me. So if they can kind of get that, make a presentation, and have it be seen as some kind of value. Now, whether it's executed or not, I don't always find that out. But they're ready to kind of pitch that and go forward. Mostly for what I say for my students is they're ready to go into the sort of the next stage, like an incubator or an accelerator. They're not ready to take my single one class. In that class, it's called Innovation Studio, and start a business. But we've got, and then in the Creative Media Industries Institute, a lot of them are learning how to be freelancers, basically. So being their own brand and figuring out how to get, jobs within hair and makeup, within like location scouting, within special effects, within 3D world building. But do we have anybody that's created like their own game company? They've tried, but they haven't made any successful games yet.
I'd like to talk on that for a moment about entrepreneurship in general and about the changing landscape over the years. I mean, obviously, I think for those of us in the industry, freelancing has always been a very viable path to making it into the industry full time. You get your foot in the door. It's all very network oriented. So the more times you can get on set, the more potential nets you can cast. But how do you really teach someone to be a freelancer? Because I think for a lot of people, it feels like one of those things that either you have the moxie to get out there and hustle or you don't. So how do you go about teaching someone that maybe it's an intimidation to them to hit the pavement, or where do you even go out there and get your first client?
Right. So that's what we spend a lot of time on. And, it's not for everybody. And so, not everybody's going to be able to do that. But I do believe that almost anything can be taught. to some degree or another. You might have a really stronger math skills, kind of thing, but you can still be taught to be a much more eloquent writer or, express yourself and vice versa. So you have to kind of want to do it. But that's what we work on is first finding out kind of what your sort of special skill set is, really understanding yourself and what your story is, and kind of authentically aligning yourself with the kind of work that you're doing so that it doesn't feel like BS. Because that's the hardest part is like, hey, will you pay me $1,000 to, create your brand package for you? Well, you don't know me from anybody and that doesn't make any sense. But if I'm like, I've been drawing since I was 7 and here's all the drawings that I have. I've transferred that into, creating logos and looks for people. I started doing it with my friends. And now, I'm taking it into the business world. So kind of helping them align that path and tell that story and making it authentic is really one of the best things that they can do. And then, we make them in the class go and do customer discovery interviews, pitch to other people, and kind of lots of little low stakes activities that actually build the scaffolding so that you don't feel intimidated by just going from nobody to asking for a bunch of money.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point you talk about is not feeling like you're selling BS. Is I think step one is, do you believe in the value and the cost of what you're selling? Like like you're saying, if you're an artist that is going to charge $1,000 for branding, but in your mind, that that's worth $10,000, then you have no issue asking for $1,000.
Yeah. So we spend, no matter which, actually in both the classes, both the I call it New Ventures in Creative Media in the undergrad, and then in the grad school, kind of understanding who you are is how we start. Because it just sort of really kind of becoming comfortable with what your story is, who you are, I get students who are, especially in the MBA program, they're from all over the world. It's very international. And so I'm like, you need to understand what the value is of being from South Africa and what connections you have and what lived experience you have and what viewpoint you have. So helping them kind of gain that confidence that makes them understand their perspective and how to speak to it in a way that, shows the value that they have.
So before the act of customer discovery, you go through self-discovery.
Yep.
Figure out what it is that I even want to sell, and then discover my ideal customer.
Yeah. I mean, it's to do all this in one class. I call it it's an iteration in it. So like if you take my class in the MBA program, you're going to take more classes that are going to build up, something where you just learn how to do, competitive analysis and pricing and things like that. But by the end of my class, you've gone through the entire process of understanding who you are, coming up with a problem that you want to solve, because that's what a business is, and then testing out solutions to that problem, and then creating, a pitch and a prototype and a website that sort of speaks to all of that, so that you're halfway there. Some people are just ready to go. And so that's in the MBA and the undergrad. Some of them, like the undergrads, are ready to kind of freelance at that point in time. They've got a website. They've, they've learned, some things about new technology. They've talked to customers. So when I get them to do a prototype, I don't get them to create a wireframe of an app, because that's what they all want to do. So they think that's what a prototype is. I was like, no, if you're going to do, if you say you're going to do graphic design, then I don't want to see you do a deeper prototype of your website. I was like, go do graphic design for a person, go do the thing that you say you're going to do. don't charge them, or do it, for really cheap, and then document the whole process. Then you've got one customer under your belt. You've done it. It might have been a disaster, but at least you've got that, So when I get them to prototype, they actually have to go do the thing, whatever it might be. And that also really gets people, going in that space.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things, because theoretically you can do everything until you start doing it and realize there's a billion wrenches in the work, and that there's things that you were never covering in class. And but like you're saying, but then also at the end of it, you have a customer testimony that you're able to take and to your next customer and say, hey, like, I completed this project for this person. Here's what their thoughts were. Unless maybe it went disastrously and you start over having learned some new things, and maybe you don't talk about that project on your resume.
Yeah. So that's, lots of baby steps and scaffolding, and all of that, but now the really, really hard part, and I think that this is where this, podcast is interesting, is that AI is just throwing throwing a wrench in the system. I don't know what the monkey part is, but throwing a wrench into the system that is just every day, whether it's about just teaching alone, or whether it's about them looking for where there might be opportunities, is really complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're saying, it's, in a lot of ways, it's allowing to empower entrepreneurs to be one-man armies and do a lot more work and do customer discovery in entirely new ways and do PR releases in entirely new ways. But in a lot of capacities, we're kind of unprepared for it. And there's a lot of things happening that the students are maybe a little ahead on businesses, but then when the students are ready to go take it to talk to businesses, the businesses are completely out of their depth. So how has that change been, seeing it on the cutting floor, where I'm sure a couple of years ago, no one was talking about it. And now you've got students coming in that are probably running circles around the educators on how to interact with AI.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting space, because I'm going to answer that last question first, because some of the students come in and they're completely against AI. And you would really be surprised about that. And I've started to have a little more kind of empathy for them, because at first I'm just like, what is you're so resistant, and then some faculty are really resistant. Some faculty are really farther ahead than the students. So there's just such a swath of, both emotion, it's very emotional. It's very, just intellectual, all kinds of different feelings that people have. But one of the things I'm noticing in the students, and I've done a bunch of surveys to try to understand their feelings, is that some of them, when you're 20 years old, you grew up with screens in your face. So they don't get as nearly as excited about another thing you can do on the screen. Whereas the old codgers like me, everything that's new in technology, we're like, wow, look at this new technology. Wow, look at this new technology. But they're like, oh my God. So some of them are kind of in that rebellious, analog world. So there's that kind of group of people. There's the group that is, especially in the creative field, that are really concerned about the ethics and, whose data everything was trained on, and whether that's going to take away their meaning in life of being a creative person that can draw or paint or, create music. So there's that. So they're torn on their own creativity. They're torn on the ethics of all the tools. They're torn on the sustainability of the, of the technology itself and the amount of energy and water and all of that kind of thing. And then, of course, then there's like in every field, everywhere, there's the hiders, the people who are using it but not telling you. And then there's the people who are, the people who are really advanced users and very excited about the possibilities. So I try to, but my take on it is all this is here, and we're going to use the tools, and I'm going to teach you how to use the tools as effectively as possible, and but it's still really really hard because you can press a button and turn out B-level work, and it's really hard for me to know.
Yeah, that's obviously such a big point of contention recently. Tons of articles have been coming out, exposés and interviews from different educators talking about the rampant use of AI within college and students using it to complete their work. And it's such a controversial talking point at the moment. And so it's really interesting to sit down and talk with someone like you, who is an educator, who is not pitchforks and instantly anti-AI. You're saying, hey, there is a line. Do I want my students just auto completing work using ChatGPT and turning it in? No. But am I okay with them using it? Do I understand that they are going to need to use it in the future with whatever work they're doing? So why do you think that you have that opinion versus so many other people in the education space who just see it as, people are going to use this to cheat, we have to stop this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a techie innovator from the get-go, so it's just my natural state. I mean, I've always pushing the boundaries of, teaching virtual reality, teaching in virtual reality, pushing the boundary of blockchain and Web3 and understanding, those technologies. So I was an early adopter of AI, and the way that I but I have to gut check myself, because you can go too far in those areas without really careful consideration of what the overall, what you're doing, and really making sure that it makes sense. So one of the first things that I did was I started teaching a bunch of faculty how to use the tools, and that I saw a lot of their, because I teach in the creative field. So it's very different if you teach, writing, or if you teach biology, or if you teach math. So I kind of really got to learn a lot about what their feelings were towards this, what their questions were. So that helped me, build in really slow, careful consideration, but still use all the tools, and just be more, just try to be thoughtful about the different perspectives that there might be.
So you're able to get direct exposure from maybe some people who are a little more hesitant, a little more, hey, here's my questions and concerns, and then kind of see those heads on, so you could alleviate maybe some concerns, but also maybe adapt how you were going to educate people based on that.
Yeah, and just be very, and just address the concerns right up front, and then allow the conversations to just take some time for people to kind of ruminate through the conversations, and just allow, and I would just say, here's the deal: you don't have to use this after this class, but I want you, if you're going to have an opinion, please use the tools first. So that is one of the things that I have that I have a pretty strong feeling about. It's like, if you're going to say, no, I don't want to use this, get this away from me, whatever, that's fine, but try it first. It's like saying, I don't like Brussels sprouts. You got to try them first.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who haven't really tried ChatGPT, or, well, really any of the AI ability tools right now, I don't want to call it ignorant, but they have a semi-ignorant understanding of what it can and can't do. They either think it's to the most extreme degree where it is already replacing us, or it's not really doing anything, and it's all phony, and everyone's kind of got the wool over their eyes with it. But I think any of us who interact with it on a daily basis are like, no, it's pretty incredible. Yes, there is still a lot of BS that is output a lot of times, and you have to be diligent when operating with it and know how to effectively utilize it. But it's a real thing, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah. One of the most effective sayings that I have to the students that are kind of that are too forward with it is I'm like, don't let AI make you its biatch. And they really resonate with that, because I'm like, you have to manhandle and keep your voice and keep your, opinions and your creativity engaged with it. And there's lots of ways to work with it, but don't, if you're just like, sort of pressing a button and handing me in junk, then you're the dupe, right? You're being the dupe. So that's how I talk with that group of people. For the ones who are really concerned about it, we start off slowly. We talk about what's actually happening behind the scenes. We talk about, other ways that you could use it. Most people, when they see it used in a way that is really helpful for them, which might be writing a hard email or dealing with a relationship, or, creating a cost benefit analysis of an idea that they've got, they start to get pretty excited. And then I also get both, even in my graduate program, I get them to do a little bit of the fun image creation stuff, because that just is, that's so delightful for that group of people.
Yeah. And I think that's important. What you're saying, though, is that you want to keep your involvement in it, especially if it's a creative thing. So let's say you're doing image generation. So many people see it as it's the death of art, rather than it is just another tool that is there to help you with your artistic expression. Like the emotion that you're expressing or the thing that you're trying to get out is the art itself and the tool that you're using for that. But yeah, like if you just say, hey, ChatGPT, make me a pretty photo and get the first output and go, here you go. It's like, yeah, you're not really doing anything, but there is a back and forth dialogue, a conversation, you taking it from there and then working with that inside of your own medium and doing things to it to interpret it and make it your own. And I think that's where, like, it's a fine line, right? Trying to find the artistic expression in the modern age of digital tools.
It's definitely a fine line. And so I use the word mid a lot, because that's a term that a lot of young kids use, is mid, so you get a lot of mid, or AI slop, as I say. But, and one of the things that it is truly, it's real, is that if you're not very good at drawing and you ask ChatGPT to create a drawing of, I don't know, a little boy sitting by a river fishing, it's going to be way better than you, right? And especially with an image. And if you ask, Sudo or Udio to create you audio or song, it's going to be, and you're not a musician, it's going to be far superior to you. If you're a musician, then it won't be superior, but, so I do in some of those fields, I do think it's and essays also, so when you get into like the filmmaking part, because that's an area I definitely want to discuss with you, then it's really hard. You have to do so much work to get all that to work together. But I do feel like creating one single image or one single song, it's kind of frightening.
Yeah. So, full transparency, the little intro jingle for this podcast was made with Suno, because I can play a little bit of music. I'm decent, but I'm not going to sit here and write and create a coffee house. I just don't have that technical ability. So in a lot of ways, it is terrifying, because obviously it is replacing a lot of jobs, but in a lot of ways, it democratizes the ability for people to now create things that they otherwise couldn't. And I'm sure you're seeing that a lot from these young people, that there's a lot of creativity and a lot of storytelling and a lot of imagination, that now they have access to tools that allow them to get their thoughts in their heads out into something that someone else can consume. So how do you see this really changing the filmmaking process, and where do you see, are kids getting more excited? Do you see their creativity getting unlocked by this, or in a way, do you see it kind of hindering them because they're using it as a crutch too much?
Yeah, my goal is to get them to boost and bolster their creativity. This last semester, I had a group of students that was in a class called immersive technology, and we worked with the Georgia Aquarium to reimagine the guest experience. And so they had to like create an actual experience and present it and pitch it to the aquarium and actually make it some component of it active at our student showcase where people are actually coming and they want to like experience. So that group of people used AI in an amazing way. Because they had a task to do, but it wasn't, its final form is not just going to be pure digital, right? It had to have some kind of interactivity to it. And so that was good. But for the filmmaking one, I don't know because I'm going to test it. This summer, I'm teaching a create an AI film in 2 weekends. So it's a sort of like a sprint, and you will create an AI film from start to finish in 4 days. And so I'm excited to see how that goes. I mean, I've done it before, and it was actually through the MIT AI Film Hackathon that I learned, um, you know, really how to do all of that in a short period of time and how to teach that. So, but I haven't put it to the test. So this summer I'm going to be teaching that, not as a GSU class, but as a, executive education or something where basically anybody can take it. But what I want to do is at each juncture I want to talk about the traditional way that screenwriting was done, the AI possibilities, and where to kind of make the choice there. And then for the oh, you disappeared for a second. um, and then do the same thing with like storyboarding, do the same thing with audio, do the same thing with editing. Of course there's going to be a lot of character building and character consistency, and all of that. And so I want people to kind of go through the process, but also just thinking, okay, this is how it used to be done. This is how I'm currently doing it because I'm doing it in this fast 4 days. This is how I'm going to do it. But, the next time I do this, where might I use a live action, a real actor? Where might I actually do the writing with on my own or with some co-writers? How might I create the storyboards more from my imagination as opposed to this coming out? So just kind of helping them kind of think through are the trade-offs at every juncture while they're doing that. So I'll know a lot more at the end of July.
Yeah, you'll have to send me the information for that class if it's open to individuals. I definitely, I'd be interested to take that. Because yeah, it's like I've experimented a little bit with it and trying to create things, and it's trying to get the cohesion of it across, trying to get consistent character dynamics, consistency with even how you are able to prompt it to have the start of my scene and the end of my scene actually make sense with where I'm trying to go with this story. But it's a lot of fun. And I think for a lot of people, that process opens a lot of creativity because it allows you to start seeing the thing and going like, well, how would I enhance this? Or what can I take away? What would I add to this too? Especially when you talk about like screenwriting. Because that's, I think, the hardest thing for someone is when you're reading a script, how do I make sure that the vision that you had when you wrote the script is the vision that I'm seeing when I'm reading the script and deciding, okay, let's make this movie or not. And having something that allows you to bridge that gap to say, this is truly the vision, and should we tweak the script because this scene doesn't make any sense? Well, I can see the scene now. I can tell, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe it works perfectly.
Yeah. Well, so I'm getting a little help on the screenwriting part with Jim Hart, who is, he wrote the screenplay for Bram Stoker's Dracula, for Frankenstein, Hook. And he has an AI writing tool. So the first part of the class is going to be him talking about screenwriting and this whole idea that he has, which is called the heart chart, which is following what the user's emotions are as you create as you have the script. So really kind of taking the user on a journey and being really, really specific about the end user, which fits so well with my perspective because everything that I teach about business is really understanding what it is that your customer wants. And so when you're creating really creative work, like, art and film, you can't say, what is it that you would want specifically, but you can say, what is the feeling or what is the journey that I'm taking them on, and really kind of understanding that, not just like, this is just the coolest thing I've ever done. It's like, yeah, but what is the feeling that the end user has when you're doing that? So we're going to start off with him helping with the writing, because you really got to get the writing, the idea down. Sure, it's going to change 1,000 times because we know you're going to go try to create, the skeleton that comes alive and, attacks the person on the podcast, but then it doesn't work out, but the skeleton ends up floating and doing something really cool. You're like, okay, that works.
Yeah. Sometimes you see something, you're like, well, maybe I like that better.
Yeah. Happy accidents. I mean, that's what experimentation art is, always that.
I think for me, that's the most exciting part about AI and the future of where it's going is the iterative process that it unlocks for us, the ability to take our art and continuously work on it or see it in different varieties. Even when we talk about whether it's a film or a creative project like a painting, being able to style change it, just being able to say, like, should this movie actually be a black and white, film noir? And what does that do if I turn this comedy into a film noir? What does that change about things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really think that, I think the bar is risen now, and so now coming up with really unique ways to express yourself, even if it's a meme in a movie of some sort, that's an interesting, 10-second short that you could make that is a meme, that is a movie of some sort, or, a moving image of some sort. I just think that we're going to unlock all kinds of new possibilities. We've seen all this work that's going on where people are creating these, you set the scene like that, what's the simulation one called, Showrunner, where you set the scene of the different characters and then it all plays out for you. It's sort of South Parky based. That is amazing. So maybe, you walk into a movie and you don't even know what it's going to be, and it just sort of something strange and unique happens every single time. I think that there's definitely going to be new kinds of art forms coming up.
Yeah, you think about the advancement of immersive experiences and what this is going to do for storytelling, like you're saying, and new ways for people to go out and experience a thing that's maybe evolves every time you experience it. Now, with this opening up and allowing so many more people to create and so much more to come out so much faster, like you said it earlier, like it's going to require people to really come up with some more creative ideas, because there's going to be, how do you see that? Like, do you feel like students are prepared and equipped for that? Or like, how do you see the landscape changing over the next couple of years as so much more stuff is able to come out and there is a lot more AI slop,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that, I just did a presentation, and I'm actually looking, on what the shifts are that I think are happening in the industry. And, I don't know for sure what is going to happen, but I think that curation and having taste over like super deep craft is one area. So, so that's another thing that I tell students. I was like, if you listen to, music all the time and you really know all the different music, then you have music taste. And so that is that. And then if you use Suno, and then like our audio professor then takes Suno work and runs it through this thing that turns it into like the stems and the tracks. And then you put it into your audio editor like Logic. And then you can change it to really get the feel that you want. But you have to have taste to do that. You not only do you have to have skill, but you have to have a lot of taste, right? You have to know like art history. If you're going to say film noir, I mean, obviously we're in the film industry, but your average person might not know film noir or understand, some of the different aesthetic language. So I think that curation over taste, because trying to dig through the slop, when you've made 500 Mid-Journey images, which one's the good one? So I think that's one interesting area. Another thing that I think is interesting, and the students get all crazy about this, is intellectual property and, kind of protecting your idea and protecting your image and protecting all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I call this the transition from IP to influence, which is go out there, resonate with people, get known for whatever it is that you've made. Don't spend a bunch of time making something in secret and trying to protect it and get all the legal stuff straight before you bring it out to the world, because the world is moving too fast right now for that kind of thing. That's a hard one, because maybe at some point in time you do get famous and you might not have the, intellectual property, copyright kind of stuff down. But I see that's another thing that I tell people. The other thing is just everything that AI tools do. I call it labor to leverage, which is, figure out how to leverage these tools to automate some of the stuff that makes you better, faster, more interesting, more dynamic, because if you're just taking too much time, unfortunately, time is one of your differentiators. The other thing is like, we're seeing a ton of people using game engines and making movies within those game engines.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another interesting thing. Maybe you make, a movie in a game engine. Maybe you make a game in a movie world. I don't know, trying to mash these things up. People are using TikToks to make little short serialized media, to build. So that, this influencer is a little bit the new director. So that's like gather your own audience in any way that you can. That's one thing, again, whether it's your friends who always know that you're the one that tells them what the best horror films are, then if you're, then you talk about horror films. And if you're the horror film person, build that up, before you make your horror film. So I call that audience to ecosystem, like, trying to figure out how to build an audience that will be interested in all the different things that you do, that care about the kind of stuff that you do, and keep this two-way conversation going with them. There's a lot to learn, but we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah, like the growth of the creator economy and this growth of influencers, we've seen a lot of people be able to use that as a launching pad to their career. Even YouTubers who are making short home films go on to be major directors of Hollywood, big main box office hits. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting, but for a lot of people, I feel like that's one of the hard things, because the idea of putting yourself out there and creating content becomes a whole other endeavor in itself, but also a kind of anxiety riddled one. Mm-hmm. How do you get out there? How do you put your face out there? Who cares about my stuff? Now, is that something that you try to address in class and teach students, as like, how to maybe be an influence, maybe be a content creator themselves, or at least how to talk about their projects in a more public place?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, and many of us, it's the old, you know, thing that you probably did in school, which is public speaking, right? But look at how many people are public speaking now. We're all public speaking on podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a skill now. You don't have to be that, that might not be for everybody. And you just need to know that's not going to be for you. So you need to know where are you going to, then are you going to get a job that is, are you going to be an employee? Are you going to be sort of the second person, where you find some partners to work with, and know what each of your strengths and skills are. But I think not being able to negotiate and converse is a detriment. You don't have to be a person that's going to be on camera all the time, but you do need to be a person who can articulate what it is that you want to do, what your vision is, and then know your strengths and weaknesses. But again, I do feel like most things are muscles that can be built up, right? It's so you just got to work on the different muscles. But no, I don't think everybody needs to be that. But in this world where I don't see people working at the same job for a really, really long time. Whether it's going to be a job interview or whether it's going to be pitching your own services is going to be, unfortunately, a part of life.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been the trend over the last couple of years, is this change where we've noticed instead of people working a career for 30, 40, 50 years, it's much more common now for people to have maybe 3 or 4 careers over their working course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Or during COVID, having 3 jobs at a time that you just do on the internet.
Yeah. You secretly have multiple laptops open and no one knows.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I'm excited, and I really love teaching the students using these tools and how to put their own spin and voice on it, and then getting them to just try new things. Because if you're not trying new things when you're in college, it's really going to be hard when you get out, because you got a nice safety net. But at the same time, like preparing for the class that I'm going to be teaching in the summer, every day I'm like, oh my God, now there's this tool. Now there's that tool. What tool do I teach? That's, to me, that's one of the core discussions that we'll have during that class is, how do you evaluate the tools that you're going to use? What criteria do you evaluate the tools with? And then here comes, Comfy UI, which I'm really interested in the fact that it's almost becoming like a creator operating system, because not only are people using it to do, text to image or text to video or whatever. Now there's these, nodes that are helping people create like apps. And so this sort of node-based creation tool is really fascinating. And then, all of this sort of running pod and these ways where you can outsource the compute is super interesting. So that's very interesting to me, that platform.
Yeah, I personally love node-based building.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the apps and AI stuff I use is primarily node-based because I'm just very visual, and the ability to lay out and see my work chain and dialogue flow and process flow and everything. It's very nice. Helps a lot. Opens up a lot of doors. How do you, as an educator, try to stay 2-3 steps ahead of your students? Because I mean, if you're going to teach them the stuff, you got to know more than they when they come in the door. So how do you stay ahead
this
of
much? You have to know this much. You just have to be running. It's well, I have figured out in my life how to try new things, and kind of, because I've got a lot of experience, because I have a lot of age, you can you can kind of figure out things very quickly. So I try a lot of new things, and I become obsessive about stuff. So I read about it, I try it. I create my own short films, trying to understand all of this. So that's how I do it. And I stay ahead. And you know what? There are plenty of times, there's always a student that comes in that knows more than me about some things. And I just like, that is awesome. Why don't you teach the class? Why don't you, give a lecture on that or give a presentation on that? And I often actually make the students, I would like, go find a tool that you find interesting and then teach it to the class. But the way I stay ahead is I teach to learn. So that's why I often do new classes. I never, even though I've talked about a couple of these different classes that I've taught for the past couple of years, I make them different every single time, just so that I can learn,
Giving yourself basically new learning assignments. You're like, okay, I'm going to teach this course in 3 months. I need to learn this
exactly.
in 3 months.
Exactly. And, so then you do. And, and then staying open-minded about when I just don't know. And also partnering like with the screenwriting stuff, partnering with people who know more than I do.
What are you finding the hardest thing for students, one, when they come into college? What are they maybe struggling with the most? And then two, like students that are graduating and going out, what are you finding is the hardest thing for them when they enter the workforce?
Entering the workforce is really hard. And especially right now, I actually, my son, the one that rode the Rocking Tiger, he's graduating this year. And you might have seen the studies, but it's the worst job market in, like decades. So again, that's the ability to differentiate yourself, the ability to understand who you are, the ability to, think about it. When you're thinking about hiring somebody at where you work, what are you looking for in somebody? A lot of it is somebody who could learn on their own, right? Because, somebody who can work on their own, someone who has the confidence to say when they don't understand your instructions or whatever it is that you're telling them. Time manage. So when people come in, time management is a huge problem. Anytime that somebody asks if they could hand something in late, I have them go take a LinkedIn learning class on time management, and then they can hand it in late. So going out into the world is really hard, and we're trying to make sure that everybody gets an internship or something so that they at least have a work experience to document. When they come in, a lot of them are looking for, tell me what to do. Tell me what are the 3 check marks that I need to do. Okay. And I could tell when they've been to, and my son went to private school for the first, up to 6th grade, and then public school after that. So I kind of know the difference. Public school, unfortunately, they have to just get everybody to check the boxes, and so there's a lot of just tell me which boxes to check. So kind of breaking that pattern is something that I spend a lot of time doing. Like, you can get an A in this class, just do the thing. You can do it just sort of half baked all the way through, but it's not going to get you very far. So breaking that pattern is something. And then, the students who've been allowed to kind of be a little bit more free in what it is that they're trying to do, getting people to think from the end user's perspective is the hardest thing I have to teach for both creatives and business people. It's like, it's not just the thing you want to do or say or sell. You've got to be solving a problem or creating experience for somebody else. That is, if I could just teach that alone, it would be
Yeah, you have to be able to imagine like who is your ideal customer and then how do they feel when they're engaging with this, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's a product and they're buying it off a shelf and your job is the branding packaging designer who wants to make them see it and go, wow, that's beautiful, let me grab it off the shelf, or you're making a movie and you
Mm-hmm.
want your art to get across and the customer needs to leave that movie feeling remorseful for the loss that the hero experienced or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. It's like the audience and the engagement from the audience is the most important thing with anything you're putting out. And I think that's like you're saying, it's interesting to me that that's such a hard part for people to step away from and say, okay, like what is the purpose of the thing that I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
from the other person?
Mm-hmm. That's a really, that is an emotional maturity kind of stage, because an 18-year-old is still kind of in their, it's kind of about themselves and their own perspective and all of that. So, you know, and plenty of 38-year-olds are that way too. But kind of trying to really help people see it from the other person's perspective, but not in a like they're criticizing me or they don't get my vision, they don't get me, they don't understand. It's like, well, the problem is that just because you have some grand vision in your head, they're not understanding it. So how can you communicate that better? You know, um, and they're like, oh, but this product is so good that if people just tried it. I was like, yeah, but you've got to, they've got to love it, and so you've got to figure out a way to get them to fall in love with the product, not by telling them that they should fall in love with the product. So yeah, that's a tough one.
What percentage of your students that are in the creative entrepreneurship side of things are doing, say, like film versus product design, packaging, or corporate branding? I mean, is it primarily film, or is it really just a cross section of all over?
Well, so it's interesting. The university is not doing itself a good service because they're not business oriented, right? So they we have the let's see, we have the College of the Arts at Georgia State, and we have the College of Arts and Sciences. And in the College of Arts and Sciences is the Creative Media Industries Institute. In the College of the Arts is film and media and music. And so the degrees that we offer are game design and game development, and then an MFA in virtual production. And then we have another undergraduate degree, which is media entrepreneurship, which is basically kind of the business of media. Um, so, but plenty of the students from the College of the Arts, Film and Media, will take some of our classes. But it's across the board. I would say the bulk of our students go out and do some kind of PR, social media.
Hmm.
That's the easiest or the most common sort of job opportunities. I think some kind of marketing and social media, and their youth is is an asset in those spaces because they might know more about Instagram stories and TikTok and Twitch and things like that. But we have students who are going into film. What does going into film mean? That means, what does that mean? Like working on a set? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone who works in film can tell you because every day it feels like what I'm doing on film is completely different.
Right, right. Well, and then, here's another place where AI has been a problem for this group of people. Many studies have shown that internships and apprenticeships are going away because now AI is your intern. That's said all the time. Use AI as your intern. So, so that like they don't get that opportunity in that space. Same with sort of what we call new entrants. If you're like, would you hire somebody who's right out of college who doesn't have a whole lot of skills in the areas? I mean, they might have some skills. They've made a couple of short films. You know, usually you're looking for somebody to do a thing, and they've kind of got some experience in that thing. And so
And
it's,
like you're saying, it's hard now because a lot of times, like, okay, let's say you were going to be a marketing person. Well, traditionally, you could go get an internship for us doing social media where maybe you're not making the post, but maybe you're scheduling them out and you're working underneath the person who makes the creatives and you're learning from them what their thought process when they make the creatives and why they make the creatives this way and the scheduling optimization. But yeah, now if I'm just having an AI do that,
mhm,
because honestly, like, I just, hey, schedule these 500 posts for me. Thank you. Goodbye.
mhm,
You know, now
yeah,
you have students who don't have those opportunities to now level up their skills to learn. Because I think internships were the thing forever to take someone who maybe knew some stuff, but they needed to learn to be self-motivated, to be a self-starter, to, cool, there are things in front of me that I know need to be done. No one's quite told me to do them yet, but I'm just going to do them because they need to be done.
yeah. Yeah, and then you understand, oh, working in a business, it's like, the customer's always right, and we got to satisfy this guy. And at some point in time, we have to, push back and say, okay, you've asked for too many changes, and you learn all that sort of stuff, when you're working somewhere. So that's a huge, that's another hit to this, the recent grads. But again, they can look for opportunities because if they do have skill set, if they're using AI to figure out this kind of stuff, whereas another group of people isn't quite learning it, or they're coming in to teach, the AI. But I don't really know because it's all changing so fast. I can't really. It's a new and weird world.
For you, what's the most exciting part of it all? Because we've talked a lot about the doomsaying, the
Uh-huh.
things that are going to be bad. But for you, what's the coolest, most exciting part about the new changes?
Well, for me personally, I'm making films again. So that's really fun to me personally. And I don't know, just seeing what this tool could do and what you could do with this tool in so many different areas. So I'm like right now I'm recreating one of my classes to be totally asynchronous. And that means that they will never meet with me. I'll record videos on some stuff. It's kind of like LinkedIn Learning, right? So I'm using a lot of agents to force a student to kind of iterate through a process, right? Because if I give them a prompt, then they'll put the prompt in, they'll get the response back, and then they'll hand that in. But if I use an agent, it'll keep asking them the question. It'll prod them through the whole thing. So that's interesting to me. So all the new teaching tools and all the things that I can do in that space, is interesting.
Yeah, can you speak more to that? And as an educator, knowing that so many of your students are going to be using AI,
Mm-hmm.
everyone does it. They're going to use it in the workforce. So you can't tell them, hey, don't give me ChatGPT. How do you develop lesson plans or tools or things around that say, yeah, they're going to use it, but I
Mm-hmm.
still need to teach them a thing. I
Mm-hmm.
still need to make sure that they're learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm deep in that right now. So I'm creating the asynchronous class, and then I'm going to teach a synchronous online class of it. Yeah, right now I'm the agents are the one thing. Oh, and the other thing that we have to deal with is that at each university you have certain tools that are that you. So I'm not asking the students to pay for a chat GPT, although I could. We're a Microsoft, our email is all Microsoft, and, we use OneDrive and all of that. So I'm having to learn all of the Microsoft tools for doing agents and stuff, which is, not really that hard because you've got ChatGPT. ChatGPT gives me all the instructions for creating my agents in Microsoft Copilot. So I teach the students a lot about tech support, use these tools if you want, so so I'm using the agents, but in my class they will create their own agent. So they're going to use, so the tools that I'm using, I'm going to teach them how to use. When like I make them, because they all have to create a website. So Wix has a lot of AI tools within it. I don't know if you've ever used it, but
Yeah.
yeah. So Wix, we use the free version of Wix. So they're using that, but it doesn't create a perfect website. You've got to go in and really do some things. So I have always been, so my students, when they come in and they're going to create a business, one person could be creating, their own special effects house, and another person could be creating, a new brand of, makeup. So I have huge different types of, students and projects that they're working on. So I've never been a person where they could cheat. I mean, they can cheat some, they do cheat, right? When I say cheat, like when they're doing their pitch and they're like, and this is the most amazing type of, crystalline based makeup, and they're reading it straight off. It's like, oh my God, please. I'm just working on that. I really talk a lot about the authenticity and being comfortable with who they are and connecting. So then you feel more like you don't need to like cheat on everything. I mean, and I'm using the word cheat. I cheat, right? I use all this stuff to help me make my syllabi, right?
Yeah.
I let them know that, and I let them know how powerful the tools can be, and how the level of expectation for what their work is also higher because everybody has access to the tools. The hardest part is, this sort of democratization is some people have the paid version of Claude and the paid version of Gemini and the paid version of ChatGPT, and you're going to get better work than if you just work in Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
And that's that's just and I will talk about that and I'll address that, but I can't solve that problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can't be like, "Hey, school, buy everyone a pro premium account." But it's very true. I have multiple premium subscriptions to multiple tools, and I feel infinitely more powerful than my friends.
Yeah, totally. When they're like, "Oh, ChatGPT doesn't know this," I'm like, "Yeah, let's try that again using O3 and whatever." And
Yeah, my buddy was over recently and he was using my account on ChatGPT and he was like, "What are these other things up here?" I was like, "Oh, those are the other models." He's like, "What do you mean other models?" I was like, "Oh, we're about to have some fun, my friends."
Yeah, totally. So it's so but at the same time, the class that I'm building right now is for the fall. And I mean, so I feel terrible because I'm like, oh, it's going to be so behind. But I also realize it's stunning to me that these tools are out there and free, and people are like, oh, I haven't tried that yet. And I'm like, but I don't understand why. But that's just me. I need to just be like, well, that's why I have a job, because people are like, oh, I'm scared to use that. I'm like, yeah, but you just type a word in and it gives you stuff back, and it's really exciting, So and I also work with the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and try to really build in scaffolding and really make sure that, again, curation is a huge part of even my job. Like, what is it that I try to cram into these, 16 or 8 weeks, depending on how long the class is, trying to pick the very best sources and the very best learning, because I have them watch YouTube videos, I have them do LinkedIn learning, but I also have them do exercise. And then I create my own, agents that walk them through. I have my own kinds of assignments, like, understanding your why and all sorts of stuff like that. Uh, but yeah, I feel so much more able to do it because I do have the tools to help me.
So what's that like, being able to constantly kind of adapt and change lessons plans? I feel like so many people who are educators feel very pigeonholed because, oh, they teach history and, okay, I've taught the same history course for the last 20 years, or, I've covered the same English course with maybe a change of book every few years. But you obviously have a lot more flexibility and fluidity with your lesson plans. So what is that like? And what is that process like for you? If, okay, right now you're working on fall, so you do have to kind of plan it out a little bit, but it's such an adaptive field anyways.
Yeah. I think that in a university as opposed to like a public school, and that's where public schools are really hemmed in at this point in time, because they have so many sort of mandates on what to teach and how to teach it and all that. That's a whole ball game. But in the university, like you might have learning outcomes, like they need to have to know these things, but how you teach that is up to you. And I think one of the things that I learned early on in teaching is that teaching is an art form in and of itself. And so be creative with the teaching of itself. So I'm very, I'm a, I can't help myself. I love to try to come up with new things and try new things. So it very much fits for me. My neighbor who's been teaching English at Georgia State for 40 years, he doesn't even like to use the online learning management system where you put your content. He doesn't even want to touch the internet. But, I think that if he can get people to critically think and probably do their essays in class with a pencil, he will get some authentic thinking in there, and he knows how to probably have really construct really good discussions, live discussions. But I think that there's a lot of people who are just taking in they're taking in AI essays and just don't know what to do, and that's
I,
a sadness.
yeah. So I got to ask, how are the students of today? Because I think there's a lot of general consensus that the youth of today are lazy. They are, are you seeing the same things? Like, have you seen a degradation in the quality of students the last couple of years, or is it like just people?
I mean, I think that I wouldn't say that the students are lazy. I mean, I think lazy is usually an emotion more than that it is like a category. So if somebody's lazy, they're not motivated for some reason, right? So if if the teacher says write an essay on, Shakespeare, Macbeth, and the father son relationship or something like that, they're going to use ChatGPT. They don't care. They just are like doing the thing. So they're just jumping through the hoops. So to me, our job is to make them not that is my job, is to make them motivated, right? And is to give them something like challenging and thought provoking and exciting. That's my job. I mean, I'm almost like an entertainer, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like teaching is performative. And I think that people that don't see that, that's a sadness for the students.
Yeah, how do you go about trying to find that spark for a student, to when you see a student that you can tell they've got something, but maybe they are currently unmotivated. Maybe they How do you try, because I know so much, like you said earlier, is about that self-discovery of your
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
What is that process like? How do you have someone find their why?
Yeah. So, and that this is another thing that makes me crazy. Like when you tell, people like, what is it that you're passionate about? Well, passions are also grown, in my opinion. You're not born just like, oh, I'm just so passionate about, I don't know,
Stocks and bonds.
Stocks and bonds. Yeah. I mean,
I love equities.
But you know what? I really got into the stock market when I was in the .com boom, because I was doing it and I was playing with it. And so you get into it because you're involved in it. I would never say, oh, I'm so interested in stocks. But once I got into it, I was like, oh my God, I'm fascinated with this. It's endlessly fascinating. Most things are, to some degree, once you have a level of knowledge. So what I like to do a lot of creativity in small, constrained, confined little blocks that have really low stakes. That gets people sort of free and kind of having fun, and then seeing, oh, wow, everybody keeps looking to me to be the person to do the visualization, or I'm really good at, prompting ChatGPT to get really great images, or I'm really good at the writing part, and everybody keeps wanting me to write. So then it's a feedback loop, but it's got to be a loop. So just getting the students involved in sort of real low stakes projects that they get to sort of experiment with. That's one way. I also get them to do a little bit of reflecting on their own story and who they are. And, I always, they're like, I've not done anything really different. I was like, okay, what makes you different than me? I was like, tell me. And so, and half my students at Georgia State, there's, 80% of my students are African-American in my, creative media, class. And the MBA students, they're all from other countries. So I'm like, there's got to be a lot of things about you that are different. Okay. So, tell the story. What is different? Who do you have access to? What have you done in your life? What do your parents do? What makes you sort of unique? What do you love to do? And so this is one of the GPTs that I've created, or it's a agent, whatever, is to help them kind of understand what makes them unique. So again, you got to go back to that self-reflection, and then moving it forward. What do you like to do? What are what's a thing that you've done for work that made you excited or proud? Just helping them kind of see themselves.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And creatives, and being a creative, is the self-expression, the unique aspects of what you have, because that's really the only thing that's going to make a drawing that if you and I both draw a cat, what makes it different is our unique perspective, our unique experiences. What cats have you seen? What cats have I seen? How were those cats' emotions? And like, cats are obviously a kind of layman version, but that extrapolates out across all things creatively. And I think a lot of people forget to get in touch with that, of what is that unique self? What are they bringing to their art?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, again, like, sometimes I'll do like a quick, just a creative 15-minute thing. And I'll be like, okay, everybody, draw a cat or draw a story about a cat, and then share it. Low stakes, nobody cares, super fun. But you might find, I find these little instances of creativity actually build people's muscles up pretty much. And it's super low stakes. So, and it's fun. So doing kind of fun things like that. The way that I taught them Mid-Journey was I brought a picture in, and I said, try to recreate this picture as perfectly as you can using the prompts. And so then, there's no low stakes. They're just trying to figure out how to get it to look just like that thing, and what language are they using, and, do it in 5 to 10 minutes, and it's fun, it's done, and they are loosened up with the whole process. So lots of little things like that.
Are you finding the students of today more resourceful at finding new solutions for things than previously?
Yeah, they are resourceful because the resources are so infinite, because they can Google and ChatGPT kind of everything. So they do, they're pretty smart in that regard, and problem solving oriented. And the other thing, and this is actually a proven part of teaching, is that they learn from peers more than they probably do from the instructor. So I try to do lots of little quick pairings, and getting them to learn from each other. I have a Discord so every student has to be on the Discord server and talking with each other, that. That way. I know some of them hate it.
No, I love that you have a Discord. That's I'd be so happy if my teacher was like, "Hey guys, download Discord." I'm like, this is the coolest teacher ever.
Some of them have said, because especially in the MBA class, they're older and they're like, "Oh my gosh, my 15-year-old son said that I'm now cool because because the 35-year-old mom is using Discord."
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
But it helps them build lots of just easy relationships with each other, and that is good.
Yeah, there's been tons of studies over the years that some of the best ways for someone to learn information, like you're saying, is to learn it from their peers. But then the inverse is true as well, where the best way for someone to retain information is by them teaching it. So as you're learning something, having the students then teach that thing to the other students, it's like both of them are getting the doubling effect of learning from each other.
Yeah, definitely. So I use a lot of that sort of think, pair, share kind of stuff. And one of my favorite things is go find an AI tool. And I'm like, here's ones to pick from. And so the ones who are not really adventurous, they'll pick one that I've given. The ones who are like, adventurous, they'll go pick something wild and give a, 15-minute presentation on how to use it, what the competitors are, why to use it. And I learn, the other students learn, they learn, the class is over. I don't have to do anything other than that, so that is definitely something I really enjoy doing, just because I see, again, then the students' confidence is, they're like, oh, I've got a 15-minute presentation on how to prompt Midjourney.
Yeah. That accelerates how well they feel about how they use the tool, interfacing with it, and it gives them a lot more tools. I'm sure when it's not just the teacher being, here's 5 tools I like, it's the class of 30, 40 people being like, here's 30, 40 new tools that we've each identified that are pretty cool.
Yeah. So, that's such a great one for me, because it's just so little work on my part.
Yeah, the AI teaches half the class, the students teach the other half.
Yeah, it actually, the worst part, and I still haven't gotten AI to figure this part out, is the grading. Grading is just like if I did do a presentation where AI has helped me, is the criteria, or the rubric. That is those were so hard for me to do. And now the beauty of getting AI to help me with a rubric, because it's really hard if you get 15 different people to give a presentation, it's like, oh, did they, how do I differentiate this one from that one?
Yeah. What are the metrics you're actually looking to quantify to determine which of these is good? Because maybe they're all good, but what makes one slightly measurably better than the other?
Yeah.
And coming up with like, okay, what are the 35 different units I'm measuring these kids on, or, these students on?
Yeah.
I'm sure I couldn't imagine trying to figure that out.
Yeah. It's so, but you know what? AI, because it's read every single, rubric that's ever been, and it totally gets it. And I mean, that kind of stuff, that's just like, that just breaks my brain. And sometimes you're like, oh, but you need to break your brain. I'm like, yeah, that's just not the place I want to do that on my brain breaking.
Is there another part of the teaching process that you're like, God, you said grading. That's what you're like, as soon as this is done, my life is set.
Yeah, because the grading is hell for me. The reason why grading is hell is I'm judging people. You know, like if I, so the first 70% of my class is sort of like, I have it really strict on getting stuff in on time and just doing the thing. So 70% of the class is like, you just did the thing and you did it on time, which then makes me feel like I'm back to doing like what the, uh, public high schools do. Um, but the cadence of just getting the student to kind of get into the cadence of it. But whenever it comes to like judging, like, was Matthew's presentation better than Elizabeth's? Does he deserve an A, or does she? I just can't stand that. It's really emotional.
Yeah, it's also really hard when you're like, okay, Elizabeth's presentation was a 100, but Elizabeth is a 100 public speaker. So it should have been. Matthew was a terrible public speaker, but damn, if this wasn't a pretty decent presentation. So should he not, like, was this not 100 for him, but it's not as good as Elizabeth?
Yeah,
So
see,
it's
and
so hard. It's
it's
so hard.
it's awful. And I'm supposed to kind of have criteria that people meet. And then but when I see the people who are struggling and having a hard time, and then they come out with something, and I hate that part. It's really
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, because unfortunately, it's the truth of the real world is sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you might fail at the thing, even if you really put your heart into it. It's just
Hmm.
like, no, you lost the job, or
Hmm.
you didn't get the bid, or you lost the freelance gig. And I think that's something so hard, especially when you're teaching entrepreneurship in business, is how do you, uh, you know, taper them for the realities of the real world, which is there are going to be times that the answer is no, and that means you don't eat because you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, definitely. And so I am also that part of I'm torn on that area also. So it's really hard for me to watch a student think that they have a really good idea and put money, ignore opportunities, and put a risk to something that I can tell is going to be something that they're not going to do well at, just because nobody would, right? Not even them. It's just not a good idea, or it's just a flooded market, or,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, so trying to balance the encouragement with the reality is really, really hard. That is, um, something. I mean, I felt the same way though with teaching filmmaking. Quite frankly, that's actually how I came up with doing the entrepreneurship. As I saw a bunch of students who were encouraged by, a bunch of film professors who were like, "That is a great short film," and I'm like, "That is a for an undergrad, a decent short film, but." Nothing in the film world is actually going to happen for you, right? You know that, right? So, you're not going to be discovered. And so that's where I was like, okay, we need to learn this sort of design thinking, iterative process, you know, uh, hustle on coming up with your own business ideas, where maybe you can do some, wedding photography on the side, in really kind of trying to understand what the real opportunities are and what the real world is. And I still don't have a complete solution to it, but I definitely try to teach to that. Um, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned pretty much most things I know through freelancing and coming up through that. And like, it was everything you say. It was like, all right, well, first it was social media and following and being an intern and learning how you make creative and what you're thinking about. And then it was, okay, I'm shooting music videos and shooting real estate commercials so I can learn, how you do this, what goes on with this. But I think that's such a skill set that so many people don't have. And there's this lack of understanding. Someone goes, cool, I made this incredible thing, I'm really proud of it, I put it up onto YouTube, Hollywood has not called me. And it's like, yes, there's a billion and one steps of you getting out there, getting people, getting jobs, going from one gig to the next gig, selling yourself. It's a million other skills that are required besides just making a thing that you're proud of.
yeah, definitely. And, but how can you leverage that by doing that, one of those a week, not one a year, or one of those, or, what part of that process did you like? Do you feel that that you could add value to another person or company? That's the other thing. What do your friends come to you for? Then turn that into some kind of business, like trying to figure that out. But it's, it's a tough, the creative world and the film world. I mean, now it used to be at least a lot of students really could go and work on film sets, and that's a much less happening right now. In that space. And then, I honestly, the world is just changing so rapidly. I'm interested to see where things are going to go and how people are going to make a living. I'm interested to see how my own child is going to get a job. And that's where I'm like, well, mom is going to like work it as well.
Try to help him figure it out. Yeah, that's got to be something so interesting to see, because now you have one of your own going out and facing the real world, and your whole career has been, how do I adequately prepare 20-year-olds and older to be prepared? And now it's like, all right, well, now you've got to do it for your own son.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
Well, and I think we all know that, and I've tried to do this with many of the students, especially when you recognize a student who has worked hard or, shows some, when I say talent is, again, I think a muscle. And so when people have worked hard and then built up, a talent, I try to make the phone calls, do the introduction, send the LinkedIn. That's what on my Discord, I provide tons of job opportunities. That's how I keep them around. They wouldn't stay around at all because I let people, when they graduate from my class, stay members of my Discord. And the main reason why people stay is because anytime I see or somebody sends me a job or an internship or a freelance gig, I post it there. So I try to provide those kinds of opportunities.
It's nice, like a continuous resource for people.
Yeah. Because finding that stuff is, as we know, it's sort of who you know.
Yeah.
And those ecosystems.
So only because I don't often get the opportunity to speak with an educator on their perspective, what was post-COVID really like with the slew of students that came through? Was there really a significant difference you saw in graduates coming into school who had just come after COVID,
It's definitely, have you ever been to the Creative Media Industries Institute?
No.
Oh, you need to come down there, but what?
I got to come do your course you're about to do.
I
gotta come do your AI filmmaking.
July 12th and 13th, 19th and 20th. It's on the weekends, so you can keep your day job. Yeah. What's cool about our facility is that it's kind of got a core studio in the middle that's got volumetric capture, motion capture, LED wall, all of that. And then we've got like a VR experience lab where you can try on a bunch of VR stuff. And then the whole second floor is open with kind of like a co-working space. And then the third floor has some computer classrooms and a big screening room. Anyway, it's a place where people like to hang out. And then when COVID hit, nobody could hang out there for 2 years. And we have not built back up to the, coming in person and hanging out all day and, chatting with your friends and making stuff with your friends. And, we have, it's slowly happening because we have the board game club and the comic book club and the innovative media club and the blockchain club. But all those kind of got smaller and less, so that's just kind of what happened in our own facility. I think that Another thing that happened is my MBA class was actually already online because it was meant for people who were working. And so those classes are at night. So you're supposed to kind of work all day and then take one or two of these classes at night. So I was very comfortable with that. But, all of us were doing everything online. Now we still have some online classes, and then we have the in-person. Students just don't come to class anymore. I mean, they really see class as optional. The physicality of coming is, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Unlike like a Georgia Tech, where a lot of people live on campus, Georgia State, a lot of people don't live on campus. And if they don't live on campus, they can't afford to live anywhere within an hour of campus.
No.
So they've got like this is where I say teaching is like entertainment. They've got to choose to come into class physically, maybe for a 2-hour class, and drive all the way in, find parking, pay for parking, come for a 2-hour class, and if I show YouTube videos the whole time or something like that, so it's got to be worth their while. So this whole idea of like physical presence is a real change,
Yeah, I wouldn't think about that as like the idea that you have to put on your own kind of theatric performance to incentivize students, because if they won't drive into the city for a concert, why would they drive into the city for a class?
Exactly. And so, of course, I have like really, all of us have like sort of strict attendance rules, or some people do, some people choose not to. The hard part for me is that for my online classes, if you miss the class, it's all nicely recorded, ready to go. And if I teach an in-person class, I don't record it. And then they're asking me, what do we do? And I'm like, oh man, go to Discord and ask your classmates. No, but it's that's actually a huge issue.
Yeah, I'm waiting. Next step for you will be not just the Discord, but you'll be Twitch streaming your class. You'll be like, all right, guys, Twitch stream live, come into class. It's here. The VOD will be up later if you're not here.
I mean, my coworkers definitely do some of that kind of stuff, because we teach game design and game development. So, they're all in the game world. And many of them actually use Discord for the whole class, like with the video, and all that. But I use the learning management system because it records all of my presentations. The grades, it's all about the grades. It keeps track of all the grades, and they really, and then I can lock when the assignment is due, and it locks at a certain point in time and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
How often is it that you have a student that you truly feel just can't be an entrepreneur? Because like from my perspective, as someone who doesn't talk to a ton of people, I feel like not everyone could do that.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's probably a small percentage of people who have the capability, but do you feel like it's maybe a higher percent that can learn, or is it really just not everyone can do it?
I think I think people can learn the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is something that we deal with a lot. So I actually, as part of this revamping of my class, I've created personas. So like there's like a persona of a person who has been dying to start their business and is taking this class to kind of get started on that. There's another person who is working at Home Depot, Truist, and they're like, I'm not leaving this job, but I want to be an innovator within my company, or I want to, move to the next level. There's a person who's like, I know I'm going to start a business, but just not right now. Right now, I'm supporting my husband while he's going to school. I got 2 kids, and but when the kids are older, I'm going to start this business. So I'm giving people visions of what kind of person they might be, but they still all go through the process of starting a business. And some of them get really enthusiastic about it. And when they're finished with my class, this is in the business school and the undergrad too. They're ready to go to an incubator or an accelerator. That's what I tell them. I tell them, unless they're very unique, they're ready to go to the next level of developing the business, not necessarily. One of the things they're like, I'm ready to ask for money, and I'm like, yeah, that's and I we talk a little bit about the whole VC funding and stuff, but I usually, just like a student who's made a short film and thinks that somebody's going to come and give them a bunch of money to create another film. I'm like, yeah, that's just not really how it works. It's like, you've got to show what the return on the investment is going to be. So without any numbers, there's not really a lot to show there. So yeah, so I think that I kind of give people an out, basically, but it's still a way of thinking, which is that you can learn to learn, that you understand what the what the value is that you're providing for another person, seeing things from that other person's perspective,
the customer's experience,
iterative, work, sort of breaking big ideas down into smaller pieces so that you can do little tests and prototypes as you go and build on that. So those are the skills that people learn, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be an authentic entrepreneur.
Is there a trait you feel is like one of the most valuable for an entrepreneur? If someone's out there saying, okay, I'm a creative and I really, really want to take this seriously and turn it into a business, is there a trait or a skill set you think is the most important for someone to develop?
I think that, you'd have to have a tolerance for risk. And this is where risk can be part of a system or a systemic, advantage or lack of advantage. So, one of the things that many of my colleagues and I talk about, if you have parents with a lot of money, then you can be risky, right? If you don't have parents with a lot of money, you can't be quite so risky. But there's a lot of different things that can fit with that risk factor. That's not just that, but a tolerance for risk, a tolerance for perseverance. Being told no a lot of times, or that's not good a lot of times, and still thinking that that you've got a good idea. That sort of persistence, is a form of, self-confidence, I think. And, I think self-confidence can compensate for a risk tolerance, and you want to, but some people, many entrepreneurs are a little bit wild, and a little bit stubborn, and that sort of makes them, that, but I do think that it could be taught. And I think that the kind of people that would go through from like my class to an incubator to maybe another incubator to finding a co-founder, that is a softer process than I'm just ready to, take on a bunch of debt and see where things are going, But I really believe in like me teaching this AI class. I'm going to teach this AI class. If it goes well, I'll build on it and do whatever, so little low stakes things like that sort of reduces the risk.
And that in itself becomes an iterative process, like you're saying, where, hey, like I'll release my prototype, which is this first version of the course. I will get customer feedback from my clients, my students,
right.
And then I'll iterate and come out with a version 2.0,
right.
And then see how that is received. And then you continuously adjust it until you go, wow, 10 out of 10.
Right.
This was the best version of this that I could possibly deliver. And I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that the thing you put out does not have to be the final thing. It does not have to be your best thing. A lot of times, just the process of creating something, especially if it is a creative endeavor and not like a traditional business, the process of just putting it out there and engaging and seeing how people like it and people respond to it, and then iterating on that, is oftentimes the most important way to improve and get better and figure out your own skill sets.
Yeah, 100%. And we use the language of of science. So we, call it a hypothesis, and then we call prototypes experiments, so it doesn't feel, art somehow feels like it's like touching it's your part of your soul. And if if somebody rejects it, then your whole soul is rejected. But if it's just like something where it's like, okay, I'm trying this, I'm giving this my best shot, but it's like an experiment. And, you're going to, you never just do one experiment, right? So really that language, I have a hypothesis that people would like this, and these are the types of people that would like this. And I'm going to try it, and then I'm going to get feedback and then iterate on it. That is another one of just like it seems so easy to say to people, like, this is how things are done, and then done. You don't even have to take a class, but it's a process to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. For you, what's the most rewarding part of it all?
Well, I love it when, people reach out and say, oh my gosh, now I'm doing this and I'm doing, and so I love seeing the students succeed. But I also, I enjoy just like teaching and having people go, oh, that's why that works. Or, oh, look at what I tried. At first I tried this, and, oh, I talked to these customers, and, they all said that this is something that they would be interested in doing. Just little aha moments. I love that kind of thing. And yeah, I really like the resonance of teaching. I really like teaching with a group of people. I love that part of it. So for
The back and forth interface,
yeah,
and the group dynamic, and especially I'm sure it's great seeing when a group of students, not only one or two of them gets it and has that eureka, but when they collectively seem to have that moment together.
yeah. So that's really fun, and just learning alongside people. Because that's kind of what I'm doing, is like learning alongside people. That's really, really fun. Um, yeah, I just can't wait for that grading bot.
As soon as I see it come across, I will let you know. I will be like, Elizabeth, I found it. It's here.
There are a many out there, but they're not really good. I mean, yeah,
Don't quite work
no,
yet.
not really.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure as always speaking with you. Any shout outs, anything, anywhere people can find you at? You want to talk about your upcoming course that people can sign up for? I know I will be in attendance.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm teaching the class. It's where you start from start to finish. You create an AI film in 4 days, 2 weekends, July 12th and 13th, and July 19th and 20th. And yeah, so I'll send you some information that maybe you can share with people for the link.
Yeah.
Right now, I just have like I'm trying to gather the people's the interest and see how interested people are. But I'm doing it whether I have one student or 30. I'm doing it, and yeah, and we're going to go through the whole process, and I'm excited. And you can go to elizaday.com, and I'll put that right first on the. I'll go right now and put that up there so people can.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. Well, Matthew, this was super good. I really didn't know we were going to talk so much about teaching, which is great, because I actually hardly ever talk about teaching. I mostly talk about like, I don't know, tech. So that was really fun.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to hear the perspective of someone who gets to see the changing landscape from student to people doing the workforce. And I think so many people forget that there is that transition.
Yeah.
I know I forgot what I was like when I was a student and didn't know things. I just assume I always knew them.
Yeah. But I guess everybody hire these young people because, and maybe get them.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.